I love this.
So
I love the
I
music.
love it
Like,
too.
yeah.
Let's make it happen. Hey Shola, who do you want to do a shout out to?
All the beach loving entrepreneurs.
Beach loving entrepreneurs. Here we Man, I love doing the show. It is like so exciting every day that I get to talk to new people that do things. So the woman that I have on today is not only a friend, she is also one of my mentors. She is a AI expert, that's artificial intelligence for all you guys that aren't up on AI. She knows things about marketing online, offline. She is a people person, she is a world traveler, and she is awesome. So let's bring in Miss Shola Abadoy. Here we go. Yo, yo,
Hello.
Shola.
Hi. I'm so happy to be in the studio with you today, Michael. How are you?
I am really, really good. So, I want people to know something about you before we get into these three myths that we're going to talk about today.
Brilliant.
That you do stuff that I I wish more people they talk about. God, you know what? I would love to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and I want to do it. But you don't just talk about it; you actually do it. And here's one of the things that you wrote on your Facebook wall. I love. Do you ever wonder what life would be like if you sold everything and started a new life in Mexico? You say there's only one way to find out. What is that way, Miss Shola?
Just do it. Nothing to it but to do it.
There's nothing to it but to do it, and you got pictures to prove that you were there. Yeah, and I love these. This is in Baja, is that right?
Yep. Baja, California, Mexico.
Baja California, Lower Mexico. I love that thing. You were hanging out with some of your friends. This is a different place, though, right?
Yep. That's Portugal.
In Portugal. You've been other places too. Where have you been?
Oh, well, I would say over the past decade, I've lived in about 25 international cities, 9 countries, and 5 islands and peninsulas. But who's counting, right?
No, just stop. Let's stop. I was happy that I moved from California to Florida and Chicago and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's all good. I love this too. The ultimate leadership metric is this: how much of my to-do list is getting done without me doing it. And we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about your metrics. You've also got some great people that you listen to and rely on too. The 80 principle is amazing. I'm sure we're going to touch on that a little bit. Richard Koch, and you are a firm believer in getting things done, writing down your goals, and making sure they happen. So let's just jump into this, Shola. I want to let people hear what you have to say. Let's talk about your the three myths that you mentioned.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, if there is anyone who's sitting around and looking at all the uncertainty that's happened due to what we know of the election, the pandemic, what I would really encourage people to do is take a deep breath and to make sure that they don't fall victim to probably the three most dangerous myths that are out there, especially with regard to selling over the internet. So I'd love to chat about a few of those. What are your thoughts, Michael?
So let's talk about first of all. Why don't we just do you want to just tell them what the three myths are, and then let's dive deep into each one.
Brilliant. So I would say the first myth is encapsulated by Jay Z's fantastic quote that goes like this: men lie, women lie, but numbers don't lie. And so the first myth is that it's totally okay to run a business without knowing your numbers. That couldn't be more dangerous for people.
Mm-mm.
Okay. And it's a killer of more entrepreneurial dreams than probably anything I've ever seen. I would say the second myth is that it is okay to subscribe, like, and share to all the gurus out there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Versus yourself. If you want to subscribe and get to know the person that is the single biggest influence on your success or failure in life, if not business, subscribe to yourself. So I'd love to talk about that whole idea of subscribing to yourself,
I
right?
like that. I
Like,
like that a
comment, and
lot.
share yourself. And then the third myth has to do with this whole idea that it's okay to do what is pretty sexy these days as opposed to what is most effective. And that's a great conversation that an aha moment people need to have about the importance of social media versus email, or rather email, which
Mm-hmm.
gives you typically puts out $42 for every $1 invested, and we'll talk about that, versus social media.
Well, let's jump back to Jay Z and let's talk about that philosophy and myth number one.
Brilliant. So here's the idea. Here's the whole idea. If I were to ask, let's say, 10 entrepreneurs, what's the single biggest thing that you need to really start a business and have it be able to fund your freedom so that you can go and live? It could be Portugal, it could be Ghana, it could be Mexico. Probably the first answer would be, oh, I need a great brand, right? and there's so many ideas about what a brand is, right? And the
Right.
second one would probably be, oh, I need a great product, okay? And what I would argue is that what you need is your numbers. Here's why. You can have 10,000 people who find out about your website today, right?
Hmm.
But if 0% buys, then you've just had a whole lot of people who proverbially walked into your shop, but they didn't buy anything. So
Right. So
if
I
you
got
don't really know your
10,000
numbers,
lookers and no buyers.
exactly. So the beauty of the internet is that you can measure things down to the very last dollar a person, and by doing that, you can make sure that you're doing what is effective as opposed to what feels good and looks effective, right? And so you don't really have a number until you have your first customer, and or rather a business, until you know your numbers and you have your first customer, and indeed until you have consistent daily sales.
So
And
what
that
is
could be
that
more
first
important.
number that people need to look at? Like, what are some of the just basic numbers that people have to look at to so they can know that, yeah, I've got something that's working?
Brilliant. So what I would say is that there are all sorts of numbers that you can measure, and people get overwhelmed. They call them KPIs, okay? Key performance
KPI.
indices.
Okay.
But what people can use as a little shortcut is literally understanding that if you were to look at a sheet of numbers, okay,
Hmm.
and we are dog family here, so excuse the dog in the background. He's
I
agreeing.
love the
He's like,
dog.
yeah, numbers. Yeah, numbers. If you know your numbers, then um, like if you're looking at numbers, what you want to look at is all the numbers that have a dollar sign beside them, right?
Okay.
Literally as opposed to a percentage sign. So the first number you want to know is called EPC, or earnings per click. How
Hmm.
many? What is the value per website visitor in terms of how much revenue? So how much revenue or sales are you earning per website visitor?
So people need to know how much is that doggy in the window.
Exactly.
Then you need to know how many of those doggies you sold and how much money they brought you. That's
Exactly.
awesome. Okay. So people, Jay Z basically has said, we need to know the numbers because numbers do not lie.
Right. And you'll be surprised at how many you can line up 100 people who have a website,
Uh huh.
and some of them could be spending thousands of dollars a month promoting that website. And I ask you, well, how much revenue or money are you earning per website visitor? And then you'll hear cricket sounds and see tumbleweeds.
Let me ask you a question. Does that take us back to what we showed earlier, where people are also talking about the 80/20, where we know that these customers are bringing in this much money and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So the 80/20 principle just says 80% of your efforts are going to be um, derived from 20% of your inputs, right? Or 20%
Yes.
of factors. A really great analogy or example to articulate that, Michael, would be as follows. If you were to pull up the number of people in the United States, you would see that 80% of the people live in 20% of the states, right? So Texas, California, New York, Pennsylvania, right? And that
Okay.
80/20 principle is actually a number that applies throughout nature, right? 80% of the country's millionaires live in 20% of the states, right? 80% of the foods that we eat are just 20 particular ingredients. So it applies not only in nature, but it also applies in business. And those are small things that are easy to understand, but they go such a long way into helping you do the
That's
things that matter and stop doing the things that don't.
That perfectly makes sense. That makes sense. So number one, we got to know our numbers, and that 80/20 principle, that Pareto's principle, is super important. Let's talk about your myth number two.
Right. So I would say myth number two is that here's the thing: we all love social media, right?
Hmm.
And everybody has a favorite person or influencer, or let's call it online mentor that they follow.
Hmm.
And every day, the average person spends upwards of 2+ hours a day on social media. Well, I would argue that one of the biggest myths and dangers when you are a goal directed entrepreneur is believing that just following those people, getting to know what they like, what they dislike, what they're good at, what they're not good at, is going to move you forward more than getting to know yourself. So I call it subscribing to yourself, right?
Can
Just
I
like
say
you
that is
subscribe
like
to,
so true? That
does
is
that make
so
sense?
true. It
Right?
does because um, I think what I have found is that so many people just they will take a guru, and I'm not going to call out any because that some of the gurus are absolutely fantastic,
Mhm.
but I think people follow too many gurus is one thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what does subscribing to yourself look like? If I were to ask you, Michael, how many, or if someone were to ask me rather, or if I were to ask one of your listeners, like how many words per minute do you type, right? Or what is your speaking speed? That is getting to know yourself. Here's why.
Hmm.
If you're watching this and you decided that you wanted to start promoting your own business, right? And you wanted to really come to understand, okay, how effectively do I communicate? What does knowing, for instance, something as simple as how quickly you type, how does that translate into getting more with less? Well, you want to know how, if you were to sit down and you say to yourself, I only have 1 hour to write a book,
Hmm.
knowing how quickly you type would have a major impact on how long that takes. The same thing goes for knowing if you are better communicating in writing or video or audio. So there are about 10 points that we need to know about ourselves. They're so important to being more efficient and productive.
Absolutely, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, for me, I know I type, X number of words, and you know what? I'm just going to talk it.
Yeah. And there's so many issues like that. Like there's so many people that are doing things, they're forcing themselves to do things that they shouldn't do. We it's the popular term is your zone of genius or your zone of excellence. Well, anything that you're doing, knowing yourself, subscribing to yourself is really knowing what your zone of genius and excellence is, so that you
Hmm.
can do more of what's productive and profitable and less of what isn't. And you can't do that unless you really get to know yourself.
Absolutely. Awesome. So we got to know yourself. You become the genius and make sure that you got that up here and you're ready to
Right.
live it and promote it and do something with
Exactly.
it.
Subscribe to yourself, right?
That
If
makes
you just
absolute
subscribe to
sense.
yourself 15 minutes a day, as opposed to whatever influencer or Facebook or Instagram, minus you, of course, because everyone wants to continue to pay attention to you. That just
I'm
makes
just
a
a
lot of sense,
vehicle.
right? But start subscribing to yourself. The time you can spend getting to know those influencers out there, get to know yourself better, and you'll be surprised at the kind of results you'll start getting.
Absolutely. And so, what's our third myth that we've got?
So I would say the third myth is that it is totally okay to do what is sexy at the moment as opposed to what is effective, right? And so what
Hmm.
does that look like? The reality of the situation is that the single most profitable marketing method, or rather distribution channel, and distribution channel just means the way that your message and your product gets delivered, is
Hmm.
email. Okay. According to the software company SendGrid, for every $1 you put into marketing via email versus the other alternatives, you're getting back $42. The ROI on email is $42.
Can you say that
And
again? Because there's so many people that I talk to, and they believe like, oh, I got to build my Facebook, I got to build my Twitter, my LinkedIn, my all these other channels, and I have gone back and told people so many times, it's like, no, you got to build your email list. So just push that home because people need to hear that.
sure, so let me ask you this question and demonstrate with pure fact as opposed to opinion. Could you log into Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, TikTok, or any of the other uh, 10 top social media sites without your email address? Could you sign up without an email address, right?
Nope.
So what that's saying is that literally all these businesses know that the key, the most intimate and the most profitable, and indeed the most personal and most effective way of communicating with people over the internet is the email address. When you go to buy something, right, they send you a receipt, right? So
Yep.
when we're talking, if you are in it to win it, meaning you don't just want looky loos, but you want sales, you must have an email address, right? In fact, I would encourage everybody to go into their inbox, do a little test, like prove to yourself. Go do a little test and go into your inbox. Let's say you're using Gmail and go in and type in blue 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 Amazon, and you'll see that Amazon has probably, let's say you've been an Amazon customer for the past 5, 6, 7 years, you will literally see thousands of emails from Amazon. And in each email, you're not just getting a receipt, but they'll also say people who like this also bought that. So
Yep.
Amazon isn't sending you DMs, right?
Right.
And
And
that's
that's with Facebook too. People think, oh, I'm just going to use Messenger. I'm going to use Facebook. Every day I get messages, email messages from Facebook saying, hey, somebody sent you something on our platform. Go check it out. Or,
exactly.
Yeah, they
So
don't rely on Facebook to get Facebook out. They use email.
exactly. And indeed, if you don't believe it, go ahead and change your email address and see what your access looks like to your social media accounts. And so it's not as if there's a battle of social media versus email, but the purpose of social media is to open up the conversation and invite people to speak to you via email, which is the modern day equivalent of sending somebody a personal a message or a personal letter as opposed to just like shouting. Okay, so that's so important. Again, $42, $1 in, $42 out. That's not the case with Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or whatever the next social media
Hmm.
trend
Right.
is going to be
Right.
in the next couple of years.
And that doesn't mean just because you're advertising on Facebook or advertising on Instagram that that's where the money is. The money comes from that list that you build from people that you can take off of those platforms
Exactly.
and control yourself. Because anyone who's been in this for a while knows about the Google slaps and the Facebook slaps and all
Sure.
those things.
And
So,
indeed, a lot of people they are communicating with folks for years, or they've been communicating with them on social media, right? But
hmm
the thing is that let's say you lose your social media account, you can't contact those people. Most people don't have the email addresses of all the people that follow them on social media, right?
yeah, you need them and you should be getting them from day zero. I was going to say
Yes.
day one, but you need to start like yesterday to get those things.
Hmm.
So awesome. So let's go through those three myths again, and then we're going to wrap this up. And I want people to be able to get in touch with you because the knowledge that you have, I've had conversations with you for hours on phone or Zoom or stuff like this, and you just keep coming up with new stuff. Every time I talk to you, you've got something you're saying, Mike, have you checked this? I'm like, no. And I'm like, okay, I'll go look at that.
Thank you for that.
So, what the three myths again? We started with Jay Z.
So myth number one is that it's okay not to know your business. All right.
That's
Myth
not
number two
okay.
is that it's okay to subscribe, like, and share, and pay attention to other gurus as opposed to yourself. You must know yourself and your zone of genius. And
Yes.
myth number three is super important. You have to focus on what's profitable as opposed to what's sexiest, and that's email as a sales channel as opposed to social media.
I want people to be able to get in touch with you. We didn't mention this at the beginning, but you are also the editor of the soon to be Tech News Herald, right?
Yep, that's our new baby, and we're so excited about what we have planned for it.
Gotcha. And are people able to get in touch with you there? And if they want to either ask you questions, hire you, bounce ideas, is this how to find you?
Sure. So I have some free resources that can help people really understand the two or three most important numbers that they need to measure on a monthly, weekly, and daily basis for their business. Okay.
Hmm.
And I also have a tool that can help you figure out what your zone of genius is, so you can do what's profitable and productive as opposed to what's not. And then the last bit is really understanding how do you go about building an email strategy so that you're independent of these social media networks. So go ahead and check out technewsherald.com/m for Michael and reach out to me, send me a text message, and I'd be happy to send you a link.
Absolutely, I love that. Everybody, Shola, thank you for being on. This has been
I
fantastic
totally
as
enjoyed it.
always, and we're gonna have you on again without a doubt. So wherever your next new destination is gonna be, we're gonna do a broadcast from there live.
Brilliant. See you at the beach, everybody.
All right, bye, everybody.